Test 1 2. Okay, let me know in the chat if you can hear the music. Y'all let me play the last live without the music coming through, so let me know how the sound is. Test 1 2. Okay, I'm gonna let some people trickle in. Let's just jam out for a couple minutes and then we will get into the episode. Test 1 2, test 1 2. Hello. Good evening, good night. Buenas tardes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the broadcast. I am Creole, one half of Untwisting the Game Crypto. Here we discuss all things Bitcoin, Stacks, Polkadot, and Cardano, NFTs in the metaverse. And we are not financial advisors, so always do your own research. All right, tonight I want to discuss a proposed bill by the Democrats in the United States Congress. It is called the ECASH Act. This bill is going to direct the Secretary of Treasury to develop and pilot digital dollar technologies that replicate the privacy-respecting features of physical cash. Interesting. In order to promote greater financial inclusion, maximize consumer protection and data privacy, and advance U.S. efforts to develop and regulate digital assets. And we're going to take a deep dive tonight. And we're going to also review frequently asked questions. And at the end of the episode, I am going to play a CoinDesk interview of its author, Stephen Lynch here. So be sure to tune in to the very end because we're going to go over 15 frequently asked questions. Hopefully, I'll be able to knock this out within the hour, depending on comments, questions in the chat. As always, I will go back through the episode and provide timestamps so you may play it back and flow freely throughout the information in this episode. I'm just going to jam out a little bit longer to let people trickle in. Okay, I may play a couple more tracks and then I'm going to jump into the information in the episode.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Look how I'm living now. Police be tripping now. Yeah, this is America. Guns in my area. I got the strap. I gotta carry 'em. Yeah, I'ma go into this. Yeah, this is gorilla. Yeah, I'ma go get the bag. Yeah, or I'ma get the pad. Yeah, I'm so cold like yeah, I'm so dull like yeah. We gon' blow like yeah. is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. Look how I'm geeking now. I'm so pretty. I'm on Gucci. I'm so pretty. I'm gonna get it. Watch me move. This is selling. That's a tool. On my Kodak. Black. Ooh, know that. Ooh, get it. Ooh, work it. 100 bands, 100 bands, 100 bands. Contraband, contraband, contraband. I got the plug on who a hawker. Whoa, they gonna find you like Baka. Blah. America. I just checked my follow and listen. You motherfuckers on me. Get down.
All right. Let's just go ahead and get started in the episode. Again, drop any comments or questions in the chat as we go through this in detail, okay? So this is Digital Privacy Public Money, the ECASH app, okay? Let's jump into it. On March 28th, 2022, Representative Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts, he is the chair of the House Committee on Financial Services Task Force and Financial Technology. He introduced H.R. 7231, entitled the Electronic Currency and Secure Hardware ECASH Act. And the full text is here. I will leave the full text to this proposal in the link below, and I will go back and forth and reference some of the full text as we answer frequently asked questions. Moving on. The ECASH Act is co-sponsored by Representatives Chuy Garcia from Illinois, Rashida Tlaib from Michigan, and Ayanna Presley from Massachusetts, and Alma Adams from North Carolina, of the Committee on Financial Services, and endorsed by Americans for Financial Reform, Demand Progress, the Action Center on Race and the Economy, and finally, the Public Money Action. The bill directs the Secretary of Treasury to develop and pilot digital dollar technologies that, quote, replicate the privacy-respecting features of physical cash in order to promote greater financial inclusion, maximize consumer protection and data privacy, and advance U.S. efforts to develop and regulate digital assets. For an interview of the bill with Congressman Lynch, click here. We will review the interview and listen to it as I play it back at the end, frequently asked questions. So let's jump into the FAQs right now. There's a total of 15, and it's a lot of good information here. And the reason why this is important is because we're getting a glimpse of what Congress is thinking about, right? And because we know there is no Fed CBDC without congressional approval. The Fed has already said this. So instead of listening to what the Fed is doing, we need to listen to what Congress is saying and proposing. Okay, let's jump into the first FAQ. Number one, what does the ECASH Act do? It's going to do 4 different points that they lay out here. So let's go through them. It directs the Secretary of Treasury to develop and introduce a form of retail digital dollar called ECASH, which replicates the offline capable peer-to-peer, privacy-respecting, zero transaction fee, and payable to bearer features of physical cash, and to coordinate their efforts with other agencies, including the Federal Reserve, through an intergovernmental digital dollar council led by the Treasury Secretary. The second is it's going to establish an electronic currency innovation program within the United States Treasury to test and evaluate different forms of secure hardware-based eCash devices. That's important. I'll point out why. And these eCash devices should not require internet access, third-party validation, or settlement on or via a common ledger, with a focus on widely available interoperable architectures such as stored value cards and cell phones. The third point is going to establish an independent monetary privacy board to oversee and monitor the federal government's efforts to preserve monetary privacy and protect civil liberties in the development of digital dollar technologies and services, and directs the Treasury Secretary to, wherever possible, promote and prioritize open source licensed software and hardware. That's another key point. And to make all technical information available for public view and comment. And finally, the fourth point is going to establish a special purpose ring-fenced Treasury overdraft account at the Federal Reserve of New York to cover any and all government expenses related to the development and piloting of eCash, and directs the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System to take appropriate liquidity support measures to ensure that the introduction of eCash does not reduce the ability of banks, credit unions, or community development financial institutions to extend credit and other financial services to underserved populations as prescribed under the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 and related laws. So let's just kind of digest that. This act is going to form a council, a program, a board, and it's going to force the Treasury to fund this research. But what's interesting here is that this act is taking in consideration another act from 1977. So if you're out there and you're thinking that the Federal Reserve is just going to drop a CBDC or a digital eCash, this technology is not congruent with laws and legislations on the books. None of this is going to happen anytime soon. This is what I keep trying to tell my community. So, I think the CBDCs and eCash, it's just a shiny object right now. Don't focus on that, okay? Focus on your Bitcoin, your blue chip projects right now. But it's interesting to see what they're thinking about, because all of this digital money, they can't just release it to the public because it's going to interfere with acts already passed and ratified, right? Okay, let's move into the second frequently asked question. What is eCash? The ECASH Act defines eCash as a currency instrument that is, one, it's legal tender issued by the U.S. Treasury, not the Fed, but the Treasury, and a general obligation of the United States, not included in calculations of public debt subject to limit order and debt ceiling. Two, a bearer instrument, distributed directly to and able to be owned, held, and used directly by the general public via secure hardware devices, and capable of instantaneous, final, direct, peer-to-peer, offline transactions that do not involve or require subsequent or final settlement, that's key, on or via a common or distributed ledger, or any other additional approval or validation by the United States government or any other third-party payments processing. So what is this saying? This is saying whatever this digital dollar or eCash is that they're going to form, okay, it's not going to be a CBDC. This is something completely separate from a CBDC. They're trying to replace physical cash, okay? Cash is a bearer instrument. What does that mean? What does bearer instrument mean? It's some form of money or currency that there is no ledger. They said, final settlement via a common nor distributed ledger. A bearer instrument is if I hold it personally, it is mine. There's my name isn't recorded on some ledger. If I hold a $20 bill, that $20 bill is mine. It's a bearer instrument. Okay. So how are they going to make this happen digitally? We're going to find out. It must be interoperable with all existing financial institution and payment provider systems and generally accepted payment standards and network protocols, as well as other public payment programs and any other digital dollar or public banking products. That's a lot of requirements for interoperability, especially since we don't have a Fed CBDC yet. Okay. Number 4, designed and administered to replicate the anonymity and privacy respecting features of physical cash to the greatest extent reasonably and practically possible, including being classified and regulated in a manner similar to physical currency, and thus not subject to third-party exemptions to a reasonable expectation of privacy, as is the case for account-based monies. So how are they going to do this? I don't know, and I doubt they know, right? So they want to build a digital system that is completely anonymous, or for the most part anonymous, right? And privacy respecting. So this ECASH digital dollar is going to be on a system separate from a CBDC or a system separate from cryptocurrencies, all right? Most likely this thing will run on servers that's attached to hardware digital devices, and we'll jump into that in a second. Number 5, designed and administered to promote equity and justice for historically marginalized communities and excluded populations, and to prioritize universal access and usability, particularly for individuals with disabilities, low-income individuals, and communities with limited access to the internet or telecommunications networks. So we already know this point number 5 that was put in there by what's her name, Ayanna Pressley and Talib, right? We already know that comes from them. But this is important. Importantly, eCash is not a CBDC. Okay, we're going to have a Fed CBDC and we're going to have eCash separate from a CBDC. So those of you out there that think the Fed is going to give CBDCs directly to retail in America, Congress is not going to let that happen. I cannot stress that enough. Okay, although eCash is a form of digital dollar, it is issued by the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, and accordingly, it is not a CBDC. Right now in America, when we're looking at laws and legislation, the Federal Reserve cannot distribute monies directly to retail, right? That's the Treasury that does that. Number 2, what eCash is not, in competition with the CBDC. It's funny they point that out. eCash is intended to complement and be developed in parallel to other forms of digital public finance, including CBDCs, Fed accounts, postal banking, and public banking. There's going to be so many different types of digital currencies and monies in America. All right, number 3. What is an eCash device? An eCash device is any piece of secured hardware issued and or authorized by the government for the purpose of receiving, holding, and transferring eCash balances. In contrast to ledger-based systems, that's in contrast to cryptocurrencies, okay, including those that use blockchain and or distributed ledger rather than a centralized ledge, okay? Let me repeat that. In contrast to ledger-based systems, which prevent double spending by verifying unspent balances against a common record of all previous transactions, eCash devices verify funds locally via a dedicated or trusted computing environment, quote-unquote servers, located on the device itself. This allows it to facilitate both offline and genuine peer-to-peer transactions without generating transactional data or requiring the approval of third-party intermediaries of network validator nodes. Honestly, this sounds like this is going to be an absolute flop. But let's keep going. There are a variety of potential forms such as devices may take, which is why the ECASH Act directs the U.S. Treasury to experiment with multiple pilot designs simultaneously. However, the most common forms, and thus most likely to be adopted initially, are a payments card and a secured chip environment on a cell phone. And they give a couple examples here. Here's an example from China. When they rolled out their CBDC. Another example is the Avant Stored Value Card, which is capable of anonymous peer-to-peer payments using a custom-made card reader device. It was issued by the Bank of Finland back in 1992, making it arguably the world's first central bank digital currency. So that's interesting. It's not going to be highly technical, whatever eCash is going to be. Because it doesn't have to be. Number 4, what is a bearer instrument? Okay, I kind of discussed this a little before, but a bearer instrument represents a legal obligation to pay whoever has legitimate physical possession of that instrument. Many forms of monetary obligations have circulated as bearer instruments over the millennia, including paper notes, wooden tally sticks, and more recently, electronic value claims stored on secured hardware devices or recorded on open ledgers. Bearer instruments are typically contrasted with account-based monies, where the right to payment is established via authentication of a person's identity third-party intermediary. A distinct but related legal concept is that of currency. A monetary law expert and Cambridge professor David Fox explains. He says currency is a special legal attribute which allows a recipient of money to take a fresh legal title which is good against the whole world. Money passes into currency when it is received by a bona fide purchaser or for valuable consideration. At this point, the title of any previous owner of that money from who it may have been stolen is extinguished. So he's going to kind of explaining the difference between currency and money and the bearer instrument part. So what's scary is if you have some cash on one of these devices in the future and you lose it, hey man, you just lose it, right? That's unfortunate, but they want to treat this as physical cash, but in the digital world. All right, number 5, and I'm going to go back to the chat and answer some questions, but number 5, does eCash involve blockchain or distributed ledger technology? The answer is no. In contrast to most cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum, eCash is a true bearer instrument. So I'm going to disagree with that, because there is no more bearer instrument in the world than Bitcoin. Why is that? Because if you have your keys physically, it's a bearer instrument. So I disagree with their assumption here that Bitcoin isn't a bearer instrument. It definitely is. Let's move on. Consequently, eCash transactions do not involve or require settlement via a blockchain or distributed ledger. Instead, an eCash transaction works by transferring an eCash balance, which is a unique digital representation of value issued and verified by the government, from one secure hardware device to another. The hardware devices themselves, as well as the security measures undertaken by the government at the point of original issue, are responsible for preventing double spending and counterfeiting. And they have a link here for more information for some of their references. With that, I'm just going to take a quick break and go to the chat, see if there's any questions. All right, keep it techie. Hey, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for joining tonight. Thanks for joining the stream. All right, let's move on in the chat. Coin Hodler, what's up, my man? Be sure to hit that thumbs up. Yes, Will Smith, the thumbs up. All right, next chat here, Nova Media TV. Hey, thanks for joining again. Peace sign, what's up? Appreciate the love. Finally here in the chat, let's take a look at Creole Crypto. I remember hearing you state that it would be 10 years for blockchain full implementation. What is the time frame and window to get into the game of investing into cryptocurrencies? So I think what you're referring to, I did an episode about an interview from the BIZ, the International Settlement Council. And on that live stream, I played a clip from, I believe he was the central bank governor from not Finland, but Sweden. And he had mentioned that what CBDCs and governments are trying to accomplish, they're trying to build new infrastructure, right? And I know a lot of Ripple and Stellar people, they think that governments are going to use the Ripple protocol. I think that's so far from the truth. If we see what's going on worldwide, central banks are creating their own blockchains. They're creating their own servers and systems. So this worldwide infrastructure to make each central bank interoperable with other central banks, that's really far away from happening. And so that's what I was getting at, and I kind of pointed that out from the governor of the central bank of Sweden. Okay, a couple more chats here. Bitcoin, altcoin, stablecoin, CBDCs are the entire technology. Yes, we are moving into a digital age, and we are not returning back. We're not turning back. So definitely keep in tune, in touch with what's going on, because your grandchildren will thank you. All right, Nova Media TV, money tight right now. Hey, my fiat money is tight too. You know, every time I touch a dollar, I put a certain percentage of that fiat money directly into cryptocurrency, and it's worked out very well for me. So, all right, let me go back to the FAQs. Let me grab a little drink. Okay, number 6 here. The question is, what distinguishes eCash from other forms of digital money? eCash is the only form of digital currency that is simultaneously these 5 things, okay? And this is what sets eCash away from cryptocurrency and eCash away from CBDCs, all right? 1, it's denominated in US dollars. 2, it's issued and guaranteed by the US government. 3, it's available for retail use by the public. 4, it's not reliant on a common ledger or any third-party payments processing intermediary. And finally, it's capable of anonymous, offline, peer-to-peer payments. So this is what separates eCash from everything else. There's a table diagram here that lays out the different types of instruments. You have cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, bank deposits, central bank reserves, CBDCs, 2-tier model, Fed accounts, which is Treasury Direct, and then finally eCash. Okay, eCash is the only instrument here that's completely lit up in green. It's a unit of account. It's issued by the government. It's for retail, all right? It's going to be hardware-based, not ledger-based, but hardware, and it's going to be completely anonymous. Everything else is not all 5 of these, okay? So there's going to be so much competition for digital money. It's okay, number 7. Why use eCash over other forms of digital money and payments? eCash is well suited to individuals who, another 5 things. 1, lack access to traditional banking and payment services. 2, value privacy and wish to avoid surveillance and or data mining. 3, are concerned about third-party censorship and or discrimination. 4, lack reliable internet or digital network connectivity. And then finally 5, are low income and or cannot afford high transaction withdrawals or exchange fees. So I know my buddy Logic Sphere loves to say banks with the tank, CBDCs are going to be digital poor people money. No, ECASH is going to be digital poor people money. CBDCs are going to be currency for the banks, not retail. Okay, moving on. On the other hand, eCash, like physical cash, does not pay interest and offers less third-party protections than traditional bank accounts or payments apps. That includes chargebacks, loss and fraud prevention, etc. Consequently, even though most people will probably choose to keep some day-to-day spending in the form of eCash, they are unlikely to invest all of their life savings in it. Question number 8. Why issue this via the Treasury and not the Federal Reserve? The Treasury has historically been responsible for designing, issuing, and securing physical money like coins via the Mint and notes via the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, as well as hardware-secured forms of retail digital money like prepaid debit cards and stored value cards, okay? Moreover, the Treasury has experience with administering large-scale retail payments programs, as well as coordinating interagency responses to systemically important financial technologies and industries. This is important. In addition, it possesses the institutional expertise and political legitimacy to navigate a complex balancing act between privacy, security, law enforcement, and civil liberties interest. This is something the Federal Reserve cannot do. All right, moving on. Indeed, the Treasury was arguably the first agency to explore the possibility of issuing a hardware-secured, privacy-respecting form of eCash. As law professor Ron Gray noted in his testimony to the U.S. House Committee on Financial Services Task Force on Financial Technology hearing back in June 21 of 2021, he says, quote, in 1995, the Electronic Money Task Force of the Treasury Department proposed the creation of a study commission into the creation of a Mint-issued digital currency card as part of Vice President Gore's broader national performance review initiative to reinvent government in light of emerging internet and other digital technologies. You know what? I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, but Al Gore was before his time. He was talking about this back in 95, right? All right, in October of 1995, there was a hearing before the U.S. Banking Committee on Domestic and International Money Policy on the topic of the future of money. Then Director of the U.S. Mint, Philip Dale, testified that the Mint's main interest in the evolution of payment system is, quote, focus on stored value cards as a potential substitute for coins and currency. Okay, they're focused on this hardware aspect of this digital eCash. Let's move on towards the bottom here. By contrast, the Federal Reserve has been researching and exploring the possibility of issuing central bank digital currency, CBDCs, for some time. And up until this point, it has shown little interest, if not outright hostility, towards a CBDC model. That is 1, capable of anonymous payments, 2, structured as a legal bearer instrument, 3, issued directly to the public, and then finally, built on secure hardware. For example, in January of 2022, the Federal Reserve released a long-awaited CBDC report, and I went over that in detail. Go look at my past videos, in which it noted that, quote, the Federal Reserve does not authorize direct Federal Reserve accounts for individuals, and such accounts would represent a significant expansion of the Federal Reserve's role in the financial system and the economy. The Fed is telling you, hey, it's not in our power. We cannot legally provide CBDCs directly to retail, right? Congress is going to have to act. Consequently, the Fed recommended the adoption of an intermediated model whereby the private sector, including commercial banks and regulated non-financial service providers, would offer accounts or digital wallets to facilitate the management of CBDC holdings and payments and operate in an open market for CBDC services. Okay, in addition, the Federal Reserve noted that financial institutions in the United States are subject to robust rules that are designed to combat money laundering and financing of terrorism. A CBDC would need to be designed to comply with these rules. They go on to this regard, a CBDC would differ materially from cash, which enables anonymous transactions. So in the future, if it's up to the Democrats, and I'm sure the Republicans are going to eventually get on board with this, there is going to be a form of digital money that's anonymous that will replace the dollar. Okay, similarly, in February 2022, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Digital Currency released a report on phase 1 of their collaborative Project Hamilton. I go in very detail on Project Hamilton. There's a video I'll show you at the end that I do a deep dive into Project Hamilton. Okay, but this Project Hamilton noted that offline payments we have not yet explored. Right, so the CBDCs they're not even there yet. Right, with being able to move CBDCs around without an internet connection. One option is to operate a parallel system using trusted hardware requiring no connectivity with the central bank to conduct a transaction. Trusted hardware would be responsible for enforcing the authenticity of CBDC while outside central bank systems, and thus vulnerable to supply chain attacks and end-user tampering. So even the Fed is telling you there's going to be 2 parallel digital currencies in America, right? One held by the Treasury and one for the Federal Reserve. Moreover, the Federal Reserve, by its own admission, has limited institutional capacity to provide retail payment services directly and lacks the institutional expertise or political legitimacy to make those decisions regarding how to balance civil liberties and law enforcement / national security interests on behalf of the broader public. Okay? Even the Federal Reserve is telling us there's not going to be a retail CBDC. We don't have the capacity to do all that. All right, let's move to number 9 here. Question: is eCash really secure? They say no technology is 100% safe. As with physical currency, there will always be some degree of counterfeiting and fraud risks associated with physical devices capable of being held and used locally by end user in offline situations. But here's the important part. The ECASH Act directs the Treasury to make all software and hardware used in the development of eCash technology available under an appropriate open source license. Why do we want these technologies to be open sourced? Because of security. If the code is available for anyone to see, there's going to be less bugs and less hacks. All right. Number 10 question here is eCash really private? The struggle to preserve and defend privacy and individual liberties is ongoing and cannot be won solely through technical means. That said, the ECASH Act represents a major step towards protecting transactional privacy during the transaction to a digitally native fiat currency regime. It does so by, again, these 6 points. I'm going to go through this quickly. Point 1, it's going to direct the Secretary of the privacy and amenity respecting and minimal transaction data generating properties of physical currency instruments to the greatest extent technically and practically possible. Number 2, it's requiring eCash devices to be secured, quote, locally via cryptographic encryption and other appropriate technologies, and prohibiting them from containing or being subject to any surveillance, personal identification, or transactional data gathering, or censorship enabling backdoor features. So that's funny. They're going to try to make this ECASH, uncensorable. We'll see if that really happens. Part 3 here, requiring that any ECASH technology be, quote, capable of instantaneous, final, direct, peer-to-peer offline transactions using secured hardware devices that do not involve or require subsequent or final settlement on or via a common or distributed ledger, or any other additional approval or validation by the United States government or any other third-party payments processing system. Okay, these transactions are going to be instant, final, and it can't be stopped by the U.S. government. Yeah, we'll see about that. Number 4, requiring ECASH be classified and regulated in a manner similar to physical currency for the purposes of anti-money laundering, KYC, counter-terrorism, and transaction reporting laws, and thus not subject to third-party exemptions to a reasonable expectation of privacy. Number 5, prohibiting the U.S. government as well as other counterparties or ECASH distributors from collecting, monitoring, or data from ECASH transactions. Finally here, number 6, it's going to establish an independent 5-member monetary privacy board. And this board is going to direct, review, evaluate, and periodic on the extent which these decisions and actions by the Treasury Secretary and other actors involved in the development of this ECASH are 3, consistent with their statutory responsibility, and more broadly, a general commitment to preserving the privacy interests of individuals. So they keep harping on privacy. We'll see if they'll be able to make this happen. Question number 11. Are there any limits to the use of ECASH? ECASH is primarily intended for use by individuals and does not exempt any person or entity from financial reporting requirements or compliance with existing criminal and civil laws. Okay, let's go to question number 12. Won't the widespread adoption of ECASH lead to an outflow of deposits from the traditional banking system, thereby reducing the availability of increasing the costs of credit? That's a good question. The answer is no. ECASH is intended to fill the social role historically played by physical currency, which represents a relatively small fraction of overall monetary activity. Indeed, most people prefer to keep most of their money in the bank where it earns interest and is protected from fraud, theft, or loss. Consequently, it is unlikely that the introduction of ECASH will result in a noticeable outflow of deposits from the traditional banking system. However, in the event this were to occur, bill directs the Board of Governors of the Fed Reserve System to, quote, take appropriate measures to ensure that the implementation and adoption of ECASH does not disrupt or substantially impact the general availability or cost of liquidity. So they're just going to print, right? Or, quote, the extension of credit and other financial services to under-reserved populations, provided that such measures, quote, in no way impair, restrict, or otherwise limit the ability of the public to access, hold, and use the ECASH. Okay, we've got a couple more questions here, and I'm going to go back to the chat. But question 13, how is the bill funded? The ECASH Act establishes permanent, ongoing appropriations authority for spending undertaken in furtherance of ECASH, with a specific amount to be determined by the Treasury Secretary on an ongoing basis. This spending is not funded via taxes or the issuance of public debt. And the bill directs the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to establish a special ring fence overdraft account for the Treasury. So we're just going to print money and to exempt that account from standard accounting rules. So we're exempting them from the rules in order to grant the Treasury a similar degree of operational flexibility in developing its digital dollar program as the Federal Reserve enjoys with its research and operational budget. Question 14, won't digitally minting eCash be inflationary? They say no. Yeah, right. They say no, though. Like physical currency, the issuance of eCash will adjust automatically based on consumer demand. I mean, that sentence completely contradicts itself. Moreover, there is little difference in inflationary impact between money finance and debt finance public spending. And this is why Congress has a spending problem, right? Because they don't understand money and monetary policy. Number 15, the question is, does this undermine monetary policy and threaten the Federal Reserve independence? The answer is no, according to them. The Federal Reserve will continue to exercise full control over interest rates, liquidity management, and the size of its balance sheet following the introduction of Treasury-issued eCash. Just as it does today, the Treasury-issued coinage, and as it did for over 50 years during the Federal Reserve notes and U.S. notes, were issued in parallel. All right, I've completed the 15 frequently asked questions. I'll leave this in the description below. And as you're going through this, actually go to the original resources. There's a lot of wealth of information here that will definitely keep you well informed more than most people. But the takeaway here is we are going to see this battle between Congress and the Fed. A lot of you all think that they're going to be on the same side, but they're not, right? We're already seeing the rift. And they want to control cash through the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go to the chat real quick, and then I want to play you a clip from the author of this legislation. All right, Nova TV is still tuned in. I appreciate it. He says, you seem to always be on the move. Will you attend Bitcoin conference this year? No, I won't be attending it this year. It's a little bit too big for me. I do go to other cryptocurrency conferences and seminars, but the Bitcoin conference by Bitcoin Magazine, it's just too many people. I don't like a lot of people. Would you recommend people go if they were able to? I mean, I do recommend it because, you know, the people that I've known that have gone there, they've been able to make connections, contacts, make new friends with like-minded people. And most importantly, they're there to listen to all the wealth of information. And I'll tell you what, even if it's not the Bitcoin conference, I suggest you go and attend the seminars, talks in person, especially in your own community. Because it's just a wealth of knowledge that you're able to gather by word of mouth other than the internet. And I've been able to invest in several different protocols that I found out super early on being in most of these seminars. I hope that answered your question. Okay. I'm going to pull up this interview. I'm going to play a couple jams right quick.
Me
Okay, thank you for rocking with me. I know it's late. I've been traveling a lot, so I try to go live whenever I can. Got a couple more chats, and then I'm going to go into the interview here. Nova Media TV says banks with the tanks will have final say over Fed and Congress. LOL. No, they won't. Hey, in this whole situation, the banks have the least power. What do you think's going to happen when Congress realizes, hey, we really don't even need the Fed, right? Because the head of the Fed is appointed by what is it, the executive branch? Like these all of these banks are in debt. The banks aren't the people with the money. The corporations are the people with the money. Listen to what corporations are saying, not banks. I got nothing but love for you, but you're wrong about that. And Todd City is wrong for sure. Okay, with that, I'm going to go into this interview. Let's just go ahead and get it started here.
And more.
Emily, taking a look at the markets, crypto markets are down. Traditional markets surprisingly up as...
And this was actually posted, this interview was posted about 5 days ago. So I'm just going to play the audio because I don't want to get it taken down.
Just over 430,000 as the unemployment rate fell to about 3.6%. We are seeing the crypto market slightly down in EU trade after a vote by the EU Parliament on pretty privacy-cutting crypto regulations in Europe. Also, Emily, we're taking a look at Senator Warren, who's talking about CBDCs.
Oh, Senator Warren.
Yeah, so this is perfect timing for our next guest. Senator Warren has basically said that the U.S. should look at adopting a central bank digital currency or a digital dollar. Senator Warren is a very well-known critic of cryptocurrencies, sort of has compared them to a bubble. So I'm actually very pleased to announce our next guest, who is Massachusetts Representative Stephen Lynch. U.S. lawmakers are introducing an ECASH bill and a new push to create a digital dollar. Now, this is very different, I believe, from what Senator Warren is suggesting. The ECASH would be more like a digital analog to cash or the green bag, and it tends to preserve privacy and anonymous transactions. But Representative Lynch can explain this in much greater detail. Welcome.
Thank you very much. You've explained it well. So our idea behind this bill was actually to try to replicate as much as possible the fungibility and the anonymity of cash, right? So a central concern with much of crypto is that in order to use some of these currencies, you need to give up data. And so the anonymity of cash, especially for small transactions, would allow us to preserve some of that anonymity. We don't want full spectrum surveillance of every transaction that we make, right? So that's the idea basically behind this bill. You're absolutely correct. It's not a crypto currency. It really relies on both technology, hardware, and software to make sure that we have widespread inclusivity. It even operates where the internet is not present and people don't have broadband. So that in some locations and also under certain circumstances, people will still be able to transact business anonymously.
So thank you. That was a very good explanation. And just to provide even more context here, so one of the main opposition to the idea of a central bank digital currency is exactly this: privacy protections, right? Because many in the U.S., including at the Federal Reserve, have said, okay, if we're going to introduce this, we need to make sure that we ensure privacy. So your proposal makes a lot of sense, right? It's the idea that we would get the benefits of this digital currency without the drawback of having, the government being able to potentially track every citizen transaction, right? So can you just talk to us a little bit, though? I mean, it seems like such a reasonable proposal, but I imagine there's some obstacles somewhere, right? So, for example, how do you prevent, what many in cryptocurrency refer to as like the double spend problem, or forgeries? I mean, that's how do you present just basically these digital dollars not being able to be just infinitely replicated? What is the solution to that?
Yeah,
That's a
because it
great
doesn't have
question.
a centralized ledger or distributed ledger.
Right.
Correct. So the way that so there are a couple of examples already out there. Whisper Cash is one, and e-currency is another, where the control that would prevent a double spend in this system, because it's not on the internet, it's not crypto. The measures that would prevent double spend are actually within both the software and the hardware of this system. And so the currencies are basically destroyed as they're transmitted from one location, from one individual to another. And that could be done by a card, probably most commonly envisioned, but also this could be on a person's phone. But once the currency is transferred to another bearer, that currency is destroyed within that the holder's technology or card. And so it's achieved through both the hardware that we're asking the U.S. Treasury to deploy, but also the software that facilitates the transfer of currencies.
Thank you. That's a very good description. So just, we just asked you a question about some of the risks here. Can you explain what are some of the benefits, right? So like, why do we need this? We have, various forms of digital payments already in the United States. I mean, Apple Pay, Venmo, why do we actually need a digital version of the US dollar? Like, what would it bring that the current digital payment system does not bring? Or, some people are also saying, why don't we just use stable coins, right? There are quite a lot of stable coins in the US. Why do we need this specific version of digital currency?
Again, that's a central question and a great question. So by having the anonymity, number one, so that people aren't subject to full spectrum surveillance in every aspect of their financial lives, we need something that is anonymous. So this would look. Cash is going away. I have some areas in my district that there are businesses that have refused to accept cash. They're going digital, and I understand that it's much cheaper, much cost efficient, and I think we've achieved such widespread adoption. I think they figure this is a good move on their part. But I also have certain demographics in certain locations where that's shutting out a significant part of the people that I represent. I have people of color in certain areas of my district that don't have access to high technology.
Why you gotta say it like that? People of color.
If you expand that worldwide, you can see where there are certain locations that would be greatly deserved by eliminating cash completely. So what we're trying to do is, we know it's going to, the digital aspect of this is very beneficial. So what we're trying to do is to recreate cash basically in a digital form with all of its qualities. And also during times of stress, if there are stresses on the CBDC system, this would provide an opportunity for people to conduct their business without interruption. And frankly, we haven't seen a really solid solution to some of the problems with crypto yet. So that will come, I think, because I think in a lot of cases, some of these stable coins and crypto are immature so far. They will fix these problems eventually, but we're not there yet. Vitalik Buterin is one of those people that says, he's got this idea or this trilemma where it's difficult to obtain decentralization and scale and
Yes.
security all
Yes.
in one. We haven't seen a system
it's impossible.
that has those qualities.
It's impossible to obtain that.
Yeah, Congressman, what I find really interesting is that this is not blockchain technology. This is not a distributed ledger. This is not cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin as we know it. This is a totally different technology on different hardware or software.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious, who made this hardware or software? And also, you want the Treasury to issue it. Why the Treasury versus, say, the Fed?
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is to set up a sort of a task force within Treasury and that's what the bill does. It sets up a task force to look at digital currency and to actually, we want them to make the decision on which technology to deploy. As I mentioned before, you've got several out there already. So there are models of this that currently exist. But we don't want to pick winners and losers here. We'd rather have Treasury, since they're the ones that are going to be responsible for deploying this, we'd rather have them make those decisions. And
who's making it, the hardware or the software?
He doesn't know.
Who's making the hardware or the software?
Well, so far it's been private industry. So far it's been Whisper Cash, it's been eCurrency, and there are other iterations as well. Those are probably two of the better known ones. But that's what we're asking for, is for Treasury to conduct research within this task force to actually come up with the best iteration of that, so that the security of this widespread adoption is there, and the anonymity. We outline the characteristics that are required within this ECASH currency. So they have flexibility within those guidelines as to which iteration to adopt.
And Congressman, do you have a sense of how much support there is for this bill in Congress?
Well, I think there's a groundswell of support for anonymity, right? There's strong support, especially within the Financial Services Committee and Chairwoman Waters, for preserving the fungibility of cash and for providing some measure that will allow people of modest means to still purchase the goods they need, and that might not have the capacity to deal in a strictly digital cash mode with a wallet, crypto wallet, and some of the complexities that offers. So this is you're right, this is a much simpler version. This is not as, I wouldn't call it low tech at all. That would be disparaging, but it is far less involved and much easier to use than a crypto wallet. And I think that if Treasury does this correctly, it will provide a parallel system for people to conduct small dollar commerce. All of the anti-money laundering laws would apply to this. So whereas cash, I think it's a $10,000 limit on transactions without filing a suspicious transaction report, those would all apply to this as well.
All right, Congressman,
just one
we
final
got to wrap it there, but it's
just to follow up on what Christine said. Just one final question. So, Christine just asked you about the support. Just if you had to really give us an honest appraisal here, what are the chances of this going through, right? Because this can be the coolest, most practical idea in the world, and it still needs to go through the Washington political process.
Percentage?
And a lot of people in Washington are really nervous about digital currencies and anonymity. So if you just had to say simply, what are the chances of this actually happening, what would you say?
Well, first of all, you have to explain it. You have to explain it because people are struggling, Congress included, to try to understand cryptocurrency right now. And there's real disparity in terms of what members understand about cryptocurrency and blockchain. So until we're able to educate people on what this is about, it would be impossible to give an assessment. Our first job is to educate people on how this works, right? And that's happening now. It's happening at Treasury. the velocity of change in this space is tremendous. And the
Yep.
ability of Congress to keep up is a
Impossible.
real struggle.
Impossible.
It really is. So those are the challenges we face, and we're trying to explain it. So it's probably a lot easier to explain than crypto, right? But we're engaged in that process.
Okay.
Following is a conversation.
Okay. So let's kind of break that down. So this Congressman Lynch, I have to hand it to him. Out of most congressional leaders right now, he understands this space quite a bit, compared to your Elizabeth Warrens or your other politicians out there. So he's done the research, he's done the work to understand the difference between cryptocurrencies and what he's trying to accomplish. Now, this is why I keep telling you all, this is not going to happen anytime soon, because these congressional leaders don't understand what's going on, right? So there's going to be a long learning curve there. One thing I wanted to point out is that he mentioned Whisper Cash here, and then he mentioned another solution called e-currency. Both of these are CBDC solutions. Notice he didn't mention Ripple, Stellar, or any of those other coins out there that people think America is going to use. That's not going to happen, right? One thing that does worry me about this Whisper Cash, are they really planning on putting money on a SIM card? How secure is that going to be? We're going to put all of America's cash on a SIM card, right? So let me go to the chat, and then I am going to end it here very shortly. Okay, Nova Media TV says, I was just joking, I really don't know. Hey, nobody really knows what's going to happen, right? We just have to go off of data, not necessarily what people are saying, but what people are doing. He says, or she, I just started doing my research. Good for you. Hey, you're ahead of 99.9% of people in the world. I am caught between you and Thai City on who is right. Until I can make my own informed critical analyses. Great debates, though. And, I love Thai City, and I think I agree with 99.9% of what he says, but I think our disagreement between us is that the banks don't have the power. Corporations have the power, right? Because if corporations pulled all of their money out of the banks would go to zero. They're in too much debt. Too much debt. All right, Coin Hodler. Creole talks data points. Thai City talks that BS. I mean, Thai City is entertaining. I love kicking it with him and going back and forth with him. But he does know his stuff, without a doubt. All right, Coin Hodler, we got to add Zuck Bucks to the list. That's what I'm saying, Coin Hodler. CBDCs, ECASH are all going to have infinite competition, right? They're going to have the Facebook bucks. They're going to have the Amazon bucks. They're going to have the Walmart bucks, right? The list goes on. Every corporation is going to have their own coin and their own ecosystem. So this eCash, CBDCs, they don't stand a chance when it comes to the internet of money. Period. All right. Hey, thanks for staying up with me, everyone out there. Click the thumbs up so it'll be on the top of people's streams in the morning. And actually, like, over 50% of the people who watch our videos aren't subscribed. So go ahead and click that subscription button. And I'm going to play one more jam, and I'm going to be out for the night. But myself or Michelle will be coming live to you tomorrow. I've got a lot of great content to talk about. Money-making content. I'm talking about 1,000% APYs. I'm letting this information go in Thai City's Telegram group, but I'm going to go live this weekend about that. So, peace. What happens next is up to you.
Sunshine. All the folks get around in the sunshine. Kiss bees and things and flowers. Just bees and things and flowers. Just bees and things and flowers. Just